after seeing some direct options for white, let's examine the very common approach of looking for a lead in development before posing practical problems for black. So bishop e2, then bishop b7. I should make a little observation here that the move order is kind of important, because after knight b d7, white has the extra option of d5, which is a direct, very direct move here, very concrete. I thought there are some games in the database in which black was able to equalize. I think there's no point on giving this extra option for white, so bishop b7 prevents it. Then castles, knight b d7, and here knight e5 is a very popular alternative. Now the bishop goes to g7, which makes a lot of sense, because the bishop can help to put pressure in the center and also keeps the king side defended. And here there are two main lines for white. The most popular is still knight takes d7. So we will see it in chapter 4. And knight takes f7 is the other popular option that I consider I analyze in chapter 5. In the database, you can also find some less played lines, such as f4, queen c2, b3, and a4. I briefly analyzed all of them, but I think the two captures with the knight are the most promising options and the most critical alternatives as well. So knight takes d7, and here knight takes d7. I think this is much better than queen takes d7, because after e5, knight d5, knight e4, white's position looks already pleasant to me, as the knight is very active on e4. So knight takes d7, and here things would be totally fine for black, but white has an annoying move now, which is bishop d6, because the bishop is well placed on d6, keeping the king stuck in the center, and now white is better prepared for moves like e5 or d5, or even to prepare the pawn breaks in both flanks, like a4 or f4. So this is a very aggressive idea for white, and this is why knight takes d7 remains as the most played in the games on the database. Yeah, it leads to some sharp positions, but my analysis showed that black is fine against any attacking attempts by white, but it's very important to know how to face them. So, for example, if black tries bishop f8, this is not the most precise move here, because after bishop takes f8, rook takes f8, and e5, then I think white has a very pleasant play here for the pawn, because the knight's coming to e4 with a strong play in the dark squares, and the break frogs like a4 or f4 are still available here. So as strange as it may look here, a6 is the right move for black. It seems a bit slow, but there are a couple of reasons why this move is good here. The first, the most obvious here to me is that white intends to play d5 to break in the sentry, and that's a very important part of white's plan of opening lines to attack the king. So defending the b5 pawn, anticipating this move, is a good way to reduce the strength of d5. Also, here black is prepared to look for counterplaying the sentry with c5. It's very important to keep b5 defended to prepare this move. So yeah, it looks slow, but it's a very good move for black here. Also because it's not so easy to continue white's plan from now. There are many moves here that can be tried, but I will try to explain them, as I think black is fine against all of them. So the most played is a4, continuing white's idea of creating tension in exploiting black's structure to increase the tension. So now d5 gains gains strength here, and also yeah, black should make something about this on this tension on the queen side. But other moves also look interesting. For example, the direct d5 here can be considered. It was played twice, and it even worked nicely for white, but I think it was mostly because black players reacted very bad after this move. So the right continuation seems to be c takes d5, e takes d5, and now black has the important resource knight f8, because the knight protects e6. And after something like bishop b4, keeping the tension, then black can continue with a5, forcing the exchange. Bishop f8, king f8, and after d takes e6, it's possible to look for simplifications, to force simplifications with bishop takes c3, b takes c3, queen takes d1, rook a d1, and f takes d6 with a apparently dynamically balanced endgame. So the direct advance doesn't pose real problems for black. But e5 can be tried here, with the point of vacating e4 to the knight, also preparing to open that file perhaps with f4. But now we see another point on a6, defending the overprotecting the b5 pawn, which allows black to go for immediate counterplay here with c5. But not bishop f8 now, which is sometimes a good exchange, a nice exchange for black. But here after bishop takes f8, either knight e4 or f4 will be very strong for white. But okay, black reacts with c5, and white has two ambitious moves here, two active moves, but none of them look really dangerous for black. But let's see both. d5, if it's very direct, then knight takes e5, and d takes e6. The attack still looks very threatening here. It looks even scary for black in view of moves like bishop h5, rook e1. But there is a very strong resource here, a very good move to solve black's problems, which is knight d3, blocking the d file and posing also this problem for white of the bishop hanging on d6. So after he takes f7, king takes f7, bishop d3, c takes d3, and queen takes d3. White had black found a very good solution here for the position, which was queen f6. This was played in one game. Then black is able to mobilize the pieces. He was able to mobilize his forces, and after bishop takes c6, bishop takes c5, queen c6, creating both two threats. Then queen f5, check, bishop f6, f3. Now black played queen c8, forcing the queen's exchange, and regained the pawn. Black even managed to squeeze this equal position into a win later. So this is against d5, but bishop h5 is very interesting here, and it can be very tricky as well, because if black plays the careless c takes d4 here, then white has queen g4 with a winning attack. Now the threat of queen takes d6 is very, very annoying, and after knight f8, queen takes d4, black's totally passive, and the white keeps a overwhelming advantage now with f4, rook d1, and the simple moves that will lead to a winning position. So now after bishop h5, then it's time to play bishop f8. It's not easy to remember. Of course, it's not easy to remember when you should play such moves, but as I said in the introduction, the anti-Moscow positions have a very concrete character. So it's important to be aware of the opponent's threats and keep calculating the position to understand what's going on when such moves are bad and when they are good. They can be both bad and good in many different positions. So it's very important to be always checking the tactical possibilities for both sides. Then here, bishop takes f8 is probably safer than knight takes f8, creating pressure on d4. This was played in one game by Najar against Malakov. Bishop f3, bishop takes, queen takes f3, but here black was able to complete the development after knight g6, knight e4, and castles, with an interesting position here. The game continued with d takes c5 and queen d3, and black managed to equalize. In other game, white tried a more aggressive approach here with d5. Then after bishop takes d6, white played bishop takes f7, but this was already too much aggressivity, because probably better was e takes d6, castles, d takes e6, f takes e6, when white has some compensation for the pawn. Probably not more than that, but white is still in the game here, trying to exploit the compensation, as white has a strong passed pawn and some chances of initiative in the king side. Bishop takes f7 was not a good sacrifice now, because after king takes f7, d takes e6, king g7, white was left to two behind in material, with a big material deficit, and the attack doesn't compensate for the piece. So he takes d6, then knight e5, and black was able to make use of his piece advantage. f4, knight d3, queen h5, and queen f6. Then after f5, knight f4, black was already winning. This analysis already showed that despite the position offering a lot of ideas for white, it's very important for the first player also to play precisely, because if black finds the right active moves to look for counterplay, or if black finds the counter attack at some point, then white's strategy tends to backfire, and it's black who suddenly plays for an attack for the initiative. So I didn't think these positions could be so dangerous for white as well before analyzing them. But now I realize that although black's position looks risky, white is also risking losing the initiative in case of careless play. Bishop h5 here is another typical and useful move, because as we have seen, ideas like d5 and d5 can always be considered, and it would be useful for white having the bishop already on h5 to play before playing moves like f4 or d5 or even queen g4. So this is another point in which black should react, trying to disturb white's position, and bishop f8 is the right move with this goal. Because if the bishop retreats to g3, then bishop g7, and it seems unlikely to me that white has something better than to repeat moves. So bishop takes f8 looks the only practical try. And here rook takes f8. It's better here to keep the chance of hiding the king on the queen side. So this is the reason to recapture you with the rook. Now white can try again can try both typical advances here. d5 seems the most principled, especially due to the bishop on h5, but there is a very strong response here for black, which is c takes d5, e takes d5, and now knight f6. This is a very strong move because it attacks both h5 and d5. This was played in one top level game and went d takes e6. There is also a very nice line here, very nice variation here with rook e1, because this seems a very clever move as the e6 pawn is pinned, and seems that black is in trouble here. But actually black has a very beautiful move to refute white's ideas. And this move is king e7. The king walks in the center, but now the e6 pawn is not hanging. And black keeps the attack on d5, h5. And after bishop f3, the line continues in a very beautiful way with b4. Then d6, queen takes d6, queen takes, king takes, bishop b7. But now black plays bc3, b takes c3. Bishop 8, a8, c takes b2, rook d1, and the knight d5. A very amazing variation, because despite having being a rook up, white is defenseless against the advance of black's queenside pawns. This is why rook e1 is not a good move here. But d takes d6 can be played, then queen takes d1, bishop takes f7, check, king e7, rook a takes d1. This was played in a game between Red Jabov against Van Valley. And now a very precise continuation would be b4, bishop e2 and bishop e4, and f4, rook fd8. Actually, this move order transposes to the game, but giving less options for white. And in fact, black has a pleasant position here, because black is a pawn down, but black has a very strong majority on the queen side, with a nice potential of creating a strong passed pawn, while this bishop is kept out of play on f7. So yeah, white is already fighting for the initiative here, and the game eventually was drawn. So d5 is totally harmless in view of this analysis, so white should try e5, which seems more logical as well, as the weak squares on black's camp are the dark squares. But here queen b6, and black is ready to castles through the queen side. This is the reason why white should play b3, trying to undermine the queen side as soon as possible. Also, a game between Red Jabov against Anand went knight e4, then long castles, and knight d6. This looks very direct, very forceful, king b8 and knight takes f7, but black has the stronger reaction here, a stronger response. Rook takes f7, bishop takes, knight takes e5, bishop takes e6, rook takes d4, simply sacrificing the exchange, because after queen h5 and c5, black had excellent compensation here with queen c6 and a strong mass of pawns on the queen side, and then the managed to win a nice game here. So knowing that black is about 2 castles to the queen side, white plays b3, but now the game continues with long castles. B takes c4, knight takes d5, exploiting the pin on the d file, and c5 here. White at the same time, white blocks the b7, the bishop on b7, and secures the d6 square to the knight for the knight. Still, white will be unable to exploit this advantage, this square, because after queen a5, knight e4, and knight c4, the knight controls d6, and the bishop e2. Looks like black is about to be in trouble, but f5 comes just in time to attack the knight. So bishop takes c4, f takes e4, bishop e6, and king b8. This has happened in 2 or 3 games, but it becomes clear soon that the game tends to end in a drawish ending, as black is able to play bishop c8 or to create counterplay on d4. And the games that reached this position ended in draws mostly. So bishop h5 can be met this way by bishop f8. Then I think the only remaining interesting option here for white is rook e1, because rook e1, like bishop f5, is also a very useful move here for that white's attacking prospects. Because in case of something like e5, for example, then white can simply play bishop e4, e takes d4, and e5, and the attack looks very powerful here already, probably winning. Now we see that the rook is ideally placed on e1. But here, the rook being on e1 makes that the break frog with f4 loses in strength. So black can play bishop f8 here. As now, if bishop takes f8, then it's possible to play king takes f8, because the rook is not supporting f4 anymore. Then black can play the king to g7 and to organize the position without big problems. So bishop f8, bishop g3. Now the bishop goes back to g7. And yeah, white has a difficult choice here, because bishop d6 only leads to a repetition. And d5 seems logical again, with the rook on e1, but black is able to parry the threats by means of c takes d5, e takes d5, and knight c5. And the knight's well placed here, and after d takes d6, knight takes d6, black has no problems. And black will play castles in the next move and keep a good position. So the only move that can be tried here that seems interesting is e5. But now the bishop is not on d6. But okay, this is the most fighting option for white. Then castles and the bishop f3. This is better than the direct knight e4, because it's knight e4, it's simply too hasty. So c5, knight d6, bishop d5, and the black's totally fine is more than fine here. Also, the sentry, white sentry, becomes unstable now. So bishop f3, and now queen e7. It's not so easy to explain this move, but black is waiting for knight e4 here, because one game went rook b8, which seems more logical than the text, because black wants to prepare c5 immediately. But the game the game can continue now with b4, a very interesting idea. And if c takes b3, a takes b3 and c5, white can play bishop b7, rook b7, and d5, keeping some pressure on a6 also. So queen e7 is an useful move, waiting for knight e4. And one game went this way, knight e4. And here we can play c5 add-ons right now. This is the point. Because after knight b6, I mean, black's not able to play c5 here because the square is totally under white's control. So white played the queen e2, rook a d1, a d8, rook a d1, knight d5, a3, king h8, queen c2, a5, and h4. And finally, white's already with a strong initiative in this position. Also based in a tactical point here that g takes h4 allows knight f6. And if knight takes f6, bishop h4 is already lost for black. So black should try to liberate his position right now with c5. And the game continued with knight takes g5, and a nice tactical point for white. Then h takes g5, bishop takes b7, rook a b8. The point that if bishop takes a6, rook b6, and the bishop's trapped. So bishop e4, c takes d4. And white should look for chances on the king side here with queen h5. Queen takes d4 is weaker because after rook f d8 the initiative is already with black. But queen h5 seems very strong, seems a very promising move, and rook f d8. The analysis showed that this position should be dynamically balanced, but it's very sharp here, and both sides should be careful because white has a strong bishop pair and the chances of opening more lines on the king side, looking for an attack. So the game went h4. Also, f4 could be considered. And here it's very important for black to keep the king side safe. So knight f8 would be the correct continuation. Then f takes g5 and d3. And black starts to have a strong counterplay here on the diagonal and exploiting the pawns on the queen side. So this seems very good for black because I don't see white's attack coming too strong. I don't see white improving the attack, and the passed pawns on the queen side will be very dangerous. But the game went with h4. And again, the correct idea here was first to secure the king side with knight f8, controlling the check on h7, h takes g5, and then d3. And black is able to combine the defense on the king side with the counterplay using the pawns. For example, rook a d1, queen c5, king h2, and b4. If something like f4, then d2, rook f1, and black can play a prophylactic move like rook d7. Very useful move to protect the second rank. For example, f5, then bishop takes e5 here is very strong because now the rook helps the defense. This is one possible variation. But okay, the positions are very sharp here and can become a mess. But it's very important for black to remember both the defense and also the counterplay. I also should say that queen h7 is even weaker because after king f8, white has serious problems with the pawn on e5, like h4 and knight takes e5. So, among many options for white, I think a rook e1 should be the most interesting sideline, but then it's important to remember when bishop f8 comes in at hand to be a useful move for black and a way to deal with white's initiative.